Okay, so I'm going to make a start. A very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Just a few instructions on the screen there. Perhaps you're new to Teams, and certainly we're all learning here as well. So do bear with us if we do have any technical hiccups. We have muted your microphones. If you've dialed in, you just need to make sure that your speakers are off. I think someone might have a speaker on there because I can hear a bit of an echo. That's better, thank you. Yeah, do please keep yourselves muted just to try and reduce any background noise. But we do have IT support on the call, so you'll notice there's a chat button in your taskbar. So please do type any issues you might have, and we'll certainly look to address those. Presumably, if you are having audio issues, then you won't be able to hear me. So I'm really hoping that you can all hear me okay. We will have questions at the end, so what we'd be grateful is that you could keep your questions until a bit later on, and then you can raise your hands and certainly we'll unmute your microphone to allow you to ask those. But do feel free to type any private messages as we go, and then we can certainly read those out and answer them later. And we've also got some questions that we were asked this morning that we'll happily share with you later on as well. But do please come back to us at a later date if you'd rather discuss things one-to-one. So today's topic is ensuring your benefits are delivering value. And we feel this is a hugely relevant topic for all HR professionals and business leaders, particularly in these uncertain times where many companies are being forced to look at cost-saving measures. My name is Tasha Fry and I'm a consultant at Johnson Fleming. And we're really lucky to call many of you dialed in today clients, so a very warm welcome to you. For those of you who are perhaps new to our webinars, thank you very much for giving us your time today. Now you'll see I'm joined by two of my colleagues on this webinar, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves. And we're actually going to start today's session by passing over to Matt, who will talk you through the new relationship between Johnson Fleming and NFP.
Thanks, Tash, and welcome everybody. I hope you can all hear me okay. Tash, give me a thumbs up if it's working. Good, excellent, because I'm on my laptop and a phone at the same time, so just trying to make it a bit harder for myself. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and really excited to talk to you all, whether you're in the States or in the UK. It's nice to see new faces and new people that we can work with. For those of you who are aware of who Johnson Fleming are, and you'll notice that NFP's on here as well. We acquired Johnson Fleming at the beginning of the year. It's a fantastic acquisition for us here in the UK, really nice fit for our business and very complementary in what we do. And we're really excited that the management team and the team that have always been at Johnson Fleming for a long time now are staying on and helping us develop and build out what we do here in the UK and also internationally as we expand into different parts of the world. Johnson Fleming's history and reputation has been fantastic for NFP and a very exciting time for us. For those of you who've never heard of NFP, we are the world's 6th largest broker. We do general insurance, benefits and private client, very much a US focus though. So the acquisitions in the UK have been are the big first footstep really outside of North America. And again, the UK is going to be the platform for global growth for NFP. Hence, we're going to be talking today about international as well as some of the things that are going on in the UK around cost saving and reviewing plans and just the general benefits arena that we're facing in this slightly unusual time. But certainly the platform for the UK is really important to NFP as we think about the growth of NFP as a global business, not just a North American business. And my final slide is really around the timing of everything at the moment. So NFP does global consulting all over the world on benefits. We think that the current time is great to just have a little bit of a sit back and rethink about what's going on. A couple of reasons. One is I think that the whole COVID background has slightly shifted the needle about what people are thinking about what they want to do for their people. And that means work culture, that means work-life balance, that means financial education, wellness education. It also, a lot of clients are thinking about how they control their benefits and understand their benefits all over the world. So it feels like now that a lot of companies have gone through the furlough process and redundancy process, and a lot of the home working planning's gone, we are seeing an increase in the amount of people wanting to talk about, well, what next for the company in terms of benefits, not just in the UK but globally. And I think the acquisition of Johnson Fleming and the skill set of NFP on global benefits consulting means that for everybody who's joined today, we can now give you a single point of contact for UK and around the world. And I guess that's the big thing we want to take people to take out of today's presentation, is we can help you wherever that might be. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you back over to Tash, who's going to start with a review of the UK and what's going on in the UK and some ideas around that.
Thanks, Matt. So let's take a closer look at what we'll cover now. I'm going to start with some ideas for strategizing. Like all successful projects, I really think there's some important prep work that you should complete before you get into the detail of your benefit design. I'll then walk you through some of the trends that we're seeing at the moment in relation to UK benefits and hopefully give you some food for thought. I'll pass you over then to my colleague Damien, who will share some ideas for any international benefits which your organisation might offer, and he'll show us some really compelling case studies to bring this to life. And then we'll certainly review some questions and see if anyone on has some questions as well. So before embarking on a review of your employee benefits, like all good projects, you need to formalise your strategy. Now, perhaps your objectives centre around cost saving in the wake of COVID-19 and recent financial strain, or perhaps you believe that your offering is out of date or perhaps uncompetitive in your industry. Whatever it might be, write it down, because that will help you keep the review focused and also help you to evaluate how successful the project has been once completed. Now, like most budgets, it's a balancing act to ensure you keep costs under control, but also offer a valuable benefits package to allow you to attract and retain the best talent. It's really important you try not to tip the scales too much in either direction. That being said, there are a number of cost-saving measures that you can introduce relatively quickly, and if you need to do so, I will certainly discuss some of the options available to you later. Now, there's also an optimum balance to be found between providing choice without overwhelming and therefore potentially disengaging your workforce. With the wide variety of employee benefits available in the current marketplace, and many of them are able to be implemented at no cost to you, it can be really easy to very quickly have a huge range of benefits, but some with very low take-up. Now, my next piece of advice would be to consider who you need to get on board and involve them early. Now, this extends from those who control the purse strings through to any employee forums or committees you might have. They can really give valuable insight into what exactly it is your people want. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a platform in place, make sure you look at all of the MI that's available, from what it's costing you through to how many employees are using each benefit. There's really rich data available that can help you with your decision making. We'd always suggest you take a really holistic approach to your benefits, and appreciate this can be challenging, perhaps if they might be under the control of different departments within the organisation. But you might well find you have benefits that overlap, or perhaps benefits you're paying for that aren't actually required. If cost saving is currently high on your agenda, is there any scope for harmonisation? Particularly if your company has grown via mergers and acquisitions, you might well find a number of different benefit entitlements exist. Again, there's some contractual considerations such as 2P, but there could be some huge premium savings as well as administration efficiencies. You might even find the insurer can reduce the rate, As a result of having less categories, it gives them less admin work, and sometimes they'll give you a better premium, even though members might have a higher level of cover as a result of the harmonisation. Next, ensure you are aware of all of the features and extra value add items that your benefits currently offer. To ensure they are competitive, we're finding insurers are offering more of these than ever before. Some group schemes now offer virtual GPs and retail discount sites. You may even find 2 or 3 of your policies include employee assistance programs or a wellbeing app. All too often we come across companies who are paying for a standalone EAP and it's already included within another policy they have. Now let's have a look at some trends in terms of the UK benefits market. Number one, I want to talk about financial well-being, and these stats are from a 2018 study looking specifically at financial well-being in the workplace. Now the figures speak for themselves, and this is why it's such a growing trend for employers' focus. I think most would agree that for the last 10 years or so, the economy's actually been pretty good. And so think for a moment about the impact that COVID-19 is set to have on an employee's financial health. Most people certainly are predicting a wide-scale recession that might go on for some time. Now, we've seen a huge rise in financial wellness being offered in the workplace, and employers have invested in this not only to support their people, but there's certainly ROI available, and it can really have a positive effect on absenteeism as well as presenteeism, which can always be as costly. Now, the next trend is virtual GPs, and I mentioned these a moment ago, and we've certainly seen the popularity of these surge. Once a really costly benefit, you can now offer these to your people via a number of different private medical insurance plans. We've even seen some insurers offering it as part of income protection or group life assurance. And as well as helping employees who might struggle to get in to see their GP, it also reduces the time off work they need to take, which can often be for really routine appointments and things like repeat prescriptions. The next trend is in relation to workplace pensions. Now, everyone has a scheme, and there's more people in the workplace saving into pension schemes than ever before. And that's why there's some serious scrutiny on the governance of the default fund, which is where you'll find most employees invest. And the fastest growing trend in workplace pension investment is without a doubt ESG. And if you've not come across this yet, and I say yet because you no doubt will, it's essentially the relationship your default fund has with a number of environmental, social and governance factors. And I've listed some of those on the screen for you there. Now, this is largely spurred on by things we've already seen in the media. So you'll have probably seen the recent documentary where David Attenborough gathered huge attention about the tragic state of the world's oceans. Greta Thunberg, Extinction Rebellion are often seen campaigning on world climate change. Now, according to a recent survey, 84% of millennials actually cite investing with a focus on ESG as a central goal. So if you've got that demographic in your workplace, it's likely it's really high on their agenda. And we've certainly got lots of further information, support and guides on ESG. So please do let me know if you need more support in this area. Sticking with workplace pensions, for most companies, it's actually your biggest benefit spend. And many companies we work with pay higher contributions than are actually required under current pensions law. So whilst there are contractual considerations and a consultation process could be required, you might find there's some significant savings that you could make. So one way to achieve these savings is by reducing your employer contributions. And we have seen some companies do this currently in the wake of COVID-19, some as a temporary measure. So as a reminder, auto-enrolment law permits that minimum contributions of 3% are made by employers. And just looking at our clients alone, many of them pay more than 3%, so would have the scope to reduce. Also, many companies base pension contributions on full earnings or basic pay, and the minimum of 3% needs only to be based on qualifying earnings. And qualifying earnings are essentially banded earnings between national insurance thresholds. So again, a saving could be generated there by a change to your pensionable salary definition. And now a further saving could be made if you offer salary sacrifice. Making pension contributions via salary sacrifice actually provides companies with a saving on their employer national insurance at 13.8% of the salary which is sacrificed. Now, many of our clients rebate some or all of that into members' pension schemes, and this could instead be retained by the employer. Now, even if you don't have a remit to cut costs, these savings could help you generate a budget, and certainly we're seeing it's a time where it can be difficult to obtain a new budget. Now, something I think everyone has in common during lockdown is the increased use of technology. It's now more than ever an essential part of allowing us to fulfill our jobs remotely. Whilst pension statements and benefits literature, total reward statements were once always sent by post, we're finding more and more functionality and instant access is available online. This is great because it allows employees to connect with their benefits at any time, on any device, in a way they do already with their personal finances and online banking. So if your schemes can't be accessed this way, it's going to be harder than ever to engage them as they're now so used to looking at technology for support. So I thought it'd be helpful to summarise, and this is something that you could certainly use as a checklist. The following steps we definitely suggest: formulate what it is you want to achieve and get the right people on board early. Do your research, find out what others in your sector are doing, ensure you're stacking up to help with your employee recruitment and retention. Think about getting the balance right, and it should be quality over quantity of benefits. Think about what data you have available to help you, and if you don't have a platform, then just ask your broker or insurer what MI they can provide. If you haven't started a financial wellbeing programme, do give it some thought. Mental, physical and financial well-being are no doubt intrinsically linked. There's also plenty of ways you can reduce your costs in terms of benefit design, which you might well want to consider, particularly in the current climate. Lastly, think about whether your employees are able to access their benefits remotely and whether the engagement tools you have stack up against the technology they're using in their day jobs currently, as well as their personal lives. So I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Damien, who's going to speak with a focus on global benefits.
Thanks, Tasha. So yes, my name's Damien Weston. I work for NFP as an international benefits consultant. So I'm going to be going over some similar topics as that Tasha's gone through today, but more on a global scale and obviously based on the UK. So yeah, let's crack on. Okay, so there's three main areas we tend to consider and employers should be considering when conducting an auditing exercise. Working at the top there, compliance. Most we find are compliant, most organisations, but areas such as pensions legislation globally is changing. Tasha would have mentioned about UK auto enrolment and minimum levels just a moment ago there, but the rest of the world seem to be following suit just in terms of some kind of pensions reform taking place. So, for example, Dubai, Ireland, Poland and Germany, just to name but a few, where there's some kind of pensions reform taking place. And from a risk point of view, how do you know that what you are offering your Australian or Japanese or Indian employees is correct in their setup? By not being compliant, there is a huge reputational risk at stake, and that is the number one thing people are worried about when it comes to assessing their global benefits. Down to the financial section there, are you still getting value for money? Are the benefits offered relevant? Are you paying the right amount of money for the level of benefit you're getting? And really, it's just when was the last time you did a full market review to identify any areas such as overinsurance, for example. And finally, benchmarking, we've got that piece there. Do you know how you compare to your peers globally? Are you getting feedback from your employees? Is no news always good news? We quite often get clients to say they're getting certain noises in certain countries, and that's the ones they tend to concentrate on. But just because you're not hearing something within a certain country, are they happy with their benefits in that country? We find that a consistent approach to your global benefits is important, and getting independent global recommendations is important to meet your global benefits goals. Absolutely. Okay, global cost saving strategies. So viewing your benefits on a wider scale internationally can often result in some leverage between the relationships that exist between multiple countries. Quite often find that there are strategic partnerships that exist across borders. So Blue Cross in the US, Bupa in the UK, they're aligned, so there could be some kind of cost savings there if you've got an organisation who is set up in more than one country, and there's that link between insurers. Multinational pooling, I won't go into too much detail about what that is because I could probably talk about it for about half an hour or so. But just as a concept, employees tend to use it to achieve cost savings, but also has the added advantage of being able to offer plans with a high free cover level or a guaranteed issue for those of you in the States, obviously via the economies of scale involved. Expat plans and the review of those, which I'll go into a bit more detail a bit later when we're looking at international private medical plans. So recently carried out some work for a US-based client, and quite a few clients have asked us to look at this really in terms of their IPMI plan and how it's set up. So it's the sort of questions you should be asking yourself as well when looking at those expat plans that exist around the world. And finally, just make sure that your designs are in line with the business requirements. Again, where do you want to be globally in terms of the benefits you offer, and are there areas that can be reviewed to ensure that they are cost effective? Okay, so see, Tasha touched upon COVID as well from a UK point of view, and I think it's obviously an understatement to suggest COVID is the main talking point globally at the moment. Certainly in my lifetime, it's the biggest news story event that's going to happen for obviously in a generation. But how has it affected what we've seen from a global benefits perspective? Just looking at a few of the things we've put on the screen there. So common questions really that we've seen globally regarding COVID-19 are around whether treatment's available through the employee's medical plans, whether the employer can buy home testing kits, what's the effect on short-term sickness pay through the state, questions like that, and whether telehealth is available. So in regards to plan changes, some countries are adapting to create policies that can assist with COVID-19 specifically. Policies are becoming available in the likes of India, Thailand, Malaysia, to specifically tackle treatment costs of the virus. And Colombia, for example, has introduced a home doctor service as individuals are struggling to visit their doctor in person. We're seeing a similar type of thing happen in Spain as well. So really just ask yourself, how are you set up to deal with dealing with COVID globally, around the different time zones you may have, different languages, state systems, insurance plans that exist. And what we've been working on recently is with our clients to make sure that they're in exactly the right position they know to be able to answer those questions on behalf of their employees. Okay, and just a couple of global trends that we've seen on the back of the outbreak. We've seen a significant increased demand for global employee assistance programs. So employees can speak with professionals about their concerns, whether that's financial, medical, family concerns, and discuss their general mental health with a counsellor. Where clients don't have an EAP in place yet, we're helping to implement global ones to assist. We're seeing quite a lot of those come to us at the moment, and we've been setting up a number of those for clients at the moment. We've also been actively working with brokers in country to establish latest guidelines and updates, and we're able to provide all of our clients with a guide of how their local providers are dealing with COVID within a week of the outbreak in that country. As well as this, we also provided our clients with the useful contact information they required in order to receive further individual guidance. So the equivalent of 111 in the UK. So where do your employees need to go if they've got symptoms or they need further guidance around COVID? And what we also did, we put together a checklist of questions companies should be asking themselves in light of the pandemic, which following this webinar today, we'll be distributing to everybody over the next couple of days or so. Okay, Tasha mentioned that I'll be running through a couple of case studies today. And this first one I'm going through now really demonstrates the work we get involved mainly with our clients who come to us looking for help with their global benefits, and the main core of clients we deal with involve looking at how they're set up globally with a view to improving the cost efficiencies. And again, as I said earlier, compliance, and also making sure they need to be against their peers. So obviously a benchmarking exercise too. So this particular client here, as you can see, publishing house based in the US, headquartered there, 1,200 employees, 32 countries. They had a team of HR people that didn't deal in international benefits per se, so didn't really know what they had in what country. Very decentralized, so individual countries making their own decisions, and they had no governance in place whatsoever to assess what they did globally with regards to their benefits. And we find that as you grow globally, it's really not acceptable to lack that type of control. And that's where we came in. So what we did in this situation, we worked with the client, established there were 3 key objectives: increasing cost effectiveness, ensuring consistency and compliance of benefits globally, and also assisting centralizing that decision-making process. And as you can see there, the way we went about that, so in terms of what we did on a per level basis, was individual country audits. So we established what mandatory benefits and supplementary benefits are in place in each country. Work with local offices in HQ to collect the appropriate data and where decisions were being made. An example I use quite a lot is, a lot of decentralized organizations, they just got decision makers sometimes in country who are maybe making decisions for their own benefit. We've come across a client where the decision maker there was giving himself 10 times more life insurance than the rest of the staff in that office. So really just flushing out that type of arrangement. And on the back of that, we created a global renewal timeline. And again, as I mentioned earlier briefly about multinational pooling, we identified where that may be feasible. And exactly where we got to at the end of the review. So the outcome really was this: we implemented standard benefits for all countries, an essential secure hub to obtain all information about all benefits in all countries. We manage that ourselves. So if you've got anybody within your organization who needs access to a life plan in Japan or a medical plan in Australia, then we've got systems in place to be able to provide that to you. So we set that up for this organization, centralized decision making to headquarters, ensured everybody was compliant in terms of each location from a state and a supplementary point of view, and also established a multinational pool which accrued a dividend of 100,000 USD over 2 years. And again, just on the back of that, as I said before, that's kind of our core proposition, but we quite often come across clients who've got international private medical plans as well. And it's a really good time to review those at the moment. There's increased competition in the market. There's a few new providers out there: April International, United Healthcare, who have seen increased competition with their presence. And really, I would just suggest as well, ask yourself: do you have an IPMI plan, International Private Medical Insurance Plan? What special deals does it provide to us? You might have a preferred provider arrangement. There's often a misconception that because you have one, you won't get a better one elsewhere, and that's really not the case. So it needs to be identified whether that's still fit for purpose, and does it still do what it originally meant to do. Insurers are obviously trying to win business in this current environment, and they are willing to offer rate caps and guaranteed rates by getting some new business on their books as well. We find that the main reasons to review. So ask yourself, there are huge financial gains. It's a quick win. You can review these quite readily, and it could have been left over a multiple amount of years as well. So a market review may be due. It may be just something that's maybe gone slightly stagnant, hasn't had a market review for a while, and that's where you might need to look at reviewing that. And just some ideas as to what to look out for. The main one we look at with clients are USA plans, maybe with people on there, employees on there who aren't necessarily requiring USA cover, aren't in the US. And that's where a big gain can be made in terms of cost savings there. As businesses grow, employers have used IPMI plans to house employees where underwriting was a challenge. And these plans have just grown to be too big, too expensive, not necessarily fit for purpose. I think the main takeaway from this slide is really to identify if you have a mix of US and non-US members on an IPMI plan. If so, then there's a high likelihood to be issues, over insurance, and again, overpayment as well. I always again use an example of in the US, you may have an international private medical insurance plan, which has got a limit of £5 million or $5 million a year, which outside of the US, nobody would get anywhere near that. In the US, you may do, but again, we can look at stripping out anybody who doesn't necessarily need that US cover. So any USA expats who are outside of the US, we can take a look at that for you and put a new design on that. So that's just a few questions to ask yourselves there as well. And yeah, it's just a case study on the back of some work we've done with some clients. This is an example of a similar project we've been working on with a number of clients at the moment. And we referred this client by an existing private equity space based in New York. Senior employees in the US were on the international private medical plan written out of the US and was ACA compliant, which therefore meant it included US coverage. But the vast majority of plan members were based outside of the US and did not need US cover. So we looked at stripping that out. But the current cost of that plan was $1.2 million a year. And that's just a few areas to look at there in terms of what we looked at. So the geographical requirements, looked at who was on the plan in terms of nationality and the area of coverage. The maximum limits, the US, as I mentioned, is the most expensive in the world, and therefore we expected stripping out that to have a significant impact on the numbers. As mentioned earlier, some have up to $5 million of cover, which outside of the US is very high. Again, the design of the plan, so are there particular areas of the plan which aren't necessarily being utilised, which could be reviewed, plan changes made in terms of limits. And again, just what we did, we fully marketed the plan, so we went out to the whole of market just to see exactly where we could get to in terms of price. Most we come across and review are set up correctly and are to an extent fit for purpose, but is it delivering value for the organisation? And you can see there, just, I mean, the main thing we did on this client was really, like I say, strip out the US coverage. And you can see we reduced the premium there by a third from 1.2 million down to 800,000. And, you know, that was obviously significant for the organisation. But as well as that, we improved the cover for the likes of dental, vision and fertility. So if you're in an organisation and you can talk to your finance director to say, you know, I can reduce our private medical internationally by a third and also make it richer, then I'm sure they'd be quite interested to see what they can do. And yeah, just a bit of a checklist to take away for you, as obviously Tasha went through on the UK side as well, a few takeaways. So ask yourself the question, how compliant are your benefits in each country? What's the risk involved at the moment? Have you got full sight of everything in every country? How are you dealing with COVID-19? I mentioned I'll be sending out a checklist to look at that as well. So again, but it's just a few thought-provoking questions we flagged earlier in terms of what each country is doing. How centralized are you? Decisions, are they made at local level, or is that something you would be looking at doing in terms of centralizing the business and bringing everything to HQ or head office? How do you currently benchmark? So we quite often get the question that the employers want to look at a global benefits package and have every benefit in the same country, which just doesn't work. It's obviously very dependent on what's topical, what's common in that country. So a medical plan in India is the absolute must, where in some other countries, medical isn't necessarily as much of a requirement. So we look at that, but we still try and get some consistency, so at least employees feel as though they're getting some kind of level benefit globally as well. And finally, are your benefits cost effective? So have you done a review recently? Are there any methods that you could be looked at in terms of reducing costs? And importantly, as I mentioned there at the end, do you have any IPMI plans? So just a few takeaways in terms of, if you do, maybe have a look to see exactly how they're set up as well. Okay, just over to Tasha for some final thoughts.
Brilliant, thanks Damien. That was insightful for those of you who have international element. I can just hear a feedback bell. There you go. Thank you. Just a couple of final thoughts then. So right now, it's likely your business might well be under more financial pressure than ever before. And 25% of the UK working population are currently understood to be on furlough. So we do think it's really the perfect time to tackle any expensive, outdated benefits, whilst cost savings are higher on everyone's agenda. Just a little diagram here to try and illustrate that. And certainly when you're thinking about each benefit that you offer, do think about the premium. It's of course very important, but also think back as to how relevant the benefit is and how well utilised it is, because certainly they're really important considerations as well. So we'd be really pleased to take any questions live. Obviously we have muted you, so do feel free to raise your hand. I think there's a little hand icon in your toolbar, and we can certainly unmute your microphones if anyone does have any questions they'd like to ask live. Otherwise, we have put a couple of questions in that were emailed ahead. We did ask anyone if they had any questions to let us know in advance, so we can answer a couple of those for you. I think the first question we've had in was pension related. So is there a way we can reduce our pension contributions for 12 months without getting in trouble? And this is a question that I'm being asked a lot. I said to you earlier that a lot of our clients are looking at ways to change their pension scheme rules to generate temporary cost savings. And certainly there is some leeway to do this around your pension contributions, particularly for those employees you might have furloughed. There's been a recent easement from the pensions regulator, so that's quite straightforward to do so. But if you haven't furloughed staff and you're looking to do this, then you will need to consider consultation. We'd certainly suggest that you follow a formal process, but also the pensions regulator is looking at everything case by case. And really considering everything on individual merits. So the quite hefty fines and things that were always in situ before COVID-19 might well be relaxed. So we just suggest you keep in touch with the pensions regulator. I think we had another question in advance that was international related, so I'll pass that one to Damien to answer.
Yeah, so a question: we have an IPMI plan that hasn't been thoroughly reviewed in a long time. How does the review process start? I would simply say, look, just drop us a message or an email as to what you've got, and we can have a chat about that. More than happy to take a look through any policy documentation. I appreciate that sometimes the policy documentation that you have from insurers isn't the easiest thing to track, but we'll be able to have a look to see if there's certainly something we can do with a current plan that you may have. And yeah, just kick it off with an informal chat to establish what we think it looks like. Yeah, so by all means, if you've got if you feel as though you're falling into that situation, just contact us and we're happy to take a look at anything you've got. Absolutely.
And a third question, again related to UK pensions: am I able to deduct normal employee pension contributions from furloughed workers' pay? And the answer there is yes, and the expectation is that you do so, unless, of course, the employee makes an election to reduce or cease their contributions. But the rules around furlough and pensions and also salary sacrifice for furloughed staff are really complicated. So we've got lots more information on the website, or I'd be really happy to speak to anyone at another time if you want to dive more into that. Did we have any questions from anyone that's on today? Please do raise your hand or unmute your microphone. We'd love to hear from you, but can't see anyone at the moment. So all that's really left for me to say is that we hope you found that interesting and, more importantly, useful. And we do really love feedback, so we will be in touch, and it would be great to speak to you after today. And do give us any ideas for any future content or any thoughts that you had. But meanwhile, please do feel free to reach out directly to Matt, Damien, or myself if you have any questions, and you'll see our details on the screen there. But thank you very much for listening.